things that I wasn't able to finish because I'm down to just using a phone. Um, Part of which is simply because I know my own timeline. Um, what was I going to say? Two things that I didn't want to forget. One I missed on the last one about frequencies when I was talking about the Big Island. The Big Island for me is like a mini classroom. It's a great place to take children to show them how pulsed life force energy works, magnetic light, electrons, consciousness. I don't have pictures to show you of the girl showing herself coming up through the magma, through the fire, okay, presenting herself as a female, okay. The birth giver of creation, the great living spirit, right? But what I forgot to mention, the importance of it is when the rock comes up and cools and produces what? A landmass. And from that landmass, you'll have, if you were simply an observer, which means you have no frequency footprint in that rock, and we have the ability to do that, okay? Which means our frequencies are not going to be in that field. But we can be aware of the frequencies that are in that field, okay? Which means we know how to leave something undisturbed without our frequency footprint disturbing it or being introduced into the electromagnetic spectrum upon which all that life is vibrating, that is naturally there as a result of what is, through analog consciousness, produced, what is the life force energy that is producing that, upon which life itself can thrive on that rock. So if you measure the electromagnetic spectrum on that rock that came up from the ocean, as an example of the Big Island, you can measure in what's known as geo-spacetime or geometric spacetime as the waves are going up and down in a given space, amount of space. The actual lifespan for every species that is using the energy that is in that spectrum that it's aware of, that it's using to be what it is aware of, which is itself, which is the state of consciousness, which means it's not the physical matter. It's simply the state of consciousness that is there. The speed of learning can be measured with every single species that is in the electromagnetic spectrum that is on that rock, upon which it is using the energy that is there, that it's drawing from to maintain what it's aware of, which is its state of awareness, in a physical way. Whether it's a bird, whether it's what else they got there? Centipedes, okay, parrots, everything that is native. Native means those species that you measure as an observer, okay, as that rock cools coming up from the Pacific Ocean, the natural frequencies, which means the natural state, something that has not been introduced into that rock that came from somewhere else, which means everything that is on that rock that is living, including all the flora and all the fauna, can be measured over geospace time, the vibrational waves that exist over space-time, and measured as to how well all of those species, given the consciousness of the analog that produced the rock upon which all the flora and fauna is there for the species to draw from as energy to maintain and reproduce itself as a species. So now you can combine all the species that are there and the energetic relationships that they have with everything else that is aware of itself and moving over geo-space-time. What happens when somebody decides something is out of balance and they now want to introduce a species that is in another part of the planet, like South America, and introduce it onto that island? It will change the energetic electromagnetic spectrum a balance in that natural habitat. That was the mongoose that they introduced to the Big Island. The mongoose does not naturally live in that environment. So we can measure the effect and the outcome of that result, which goes back to childhood, which is why I said they're always fucking with nature. And they do not know what they're doing. Why? Because they are not analog. Okay? They are binary artificial intelligence. Big difference. So this is one of the reasons why we are not going to miss binary duality artificial intelligence. We will not miss you. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have a clue how the natural cosmos proliferates itself by being in peace, harmony, and balance with it. Which means they don't know how to just be free, to be a unit of consciousness in which it's observing the beauty of the cosmos without needing to have a need to hold it captive for its energy. They don't know how to do that. They use their intelligence instead to acquire more of what the cosmos is, instead of being more of what the cosmos is, which is what light is. To go faster, to free itself from captivity of its own mind. That's the Anunnaki. That's the Draco. Those are the Nazis. Those are the Archons. Those are the beings that have not learned to let go. So one of the ways in which we can see programming work in a very real way with, if you want to use the word humans or hominid-looking bipeds, that's cool. But what I mentioned in the previous video about how a migration of parasites had moved and converted what was a red state into a blue state, what we're really talking about here when we talk about Democrats is we're talking about demons. Okay? Demons that feed on the light. And thus, instead of being an energy producer by spinning their Merkaba faster, these are the ones that are coming up to other people because they have not learned how to do that. And that's because they were reprogrammed. How do you do that? If you want to means test it, go anywhere to any city where there's pigeons. And they'll start flocking around you. And what are they saying? What is their message to you? Feed me. Feed me. Feed me. Okay? Same thing with the sign and the bears when you go into a national park. Please do not feed the bears. If you want to see a bear in its natural habitat acting the way that a bear normally acts, the way that a bear is naturally experiencing what a bear is with its natural DNA, then observe it without trying to fuck with it. Okay, which means allow a bear to be a bear without a bear experiencing that it has a reason to protect itself against something that's trying to fuck with it. Okay, trying to control it, trying to reprogram it. So how do they reprogram a bear? Simple. All you got to do is start telling the bear, listen, there isn't any need for you to use your energy anymore to go looking for berries or go to fish for salmon. Hell, all you got to do is come to us and we'll got a picnic basket here for you. We'll start feeding you. Next thing you know is the memory that it had that it was operating off of, which is its unconscious memory, which essentially is its DNA of what it remembers what it's supposed to do in order to use its energy to keep itself fed, which is energy, is to do what? I get it from you. Now all I got to do is knock on your door, fill out an application, and I get free energy from you. Where's that energy coming from? Light workers, light warriors, people that spin a fast Merkaba. okay, which are the producers. And in biology, those are known as trophic levels. So what happens is, in a universal way, in a classroom, what we're measuring here is the loss and the gain, huh? What happens when the parasites outnumber the producers? See? So when you extract all of the stuff from the planet through the way that we translate what money is, then the only way that everybody can continue to run the program, which is parasitic, which is parasiting from the planet itself, in order to have more things, in order to acquire more money, is to continue to parasite off the planet to keep that process running. And then what do? We throw all that junk back into the planet and say thank you. We got to have all these things. Take a look around any city that you walk in. Look how many cars are sitting on car lots that aren't even being used by people that might need a vehicle. They don't have enough money to even get one, do they? Then why don't you start adding up on every dealership in the United States of America cars that are sitting there that are never going to be sold unless they ship them off to some other country at a reduced price, in which some poor person in Mexico or Guadalajara can then pay for it, and then they get it. That was produced by a worker who was making $20 an hour in order to put food on the plate for that family, as a result of everything that was extracted from the girl on the planet to make those automobiles that sat on those lots, in which that energy was just sitting there stagnant, which means that's electrons, it's not moving. But all the electrons were used in order to extract from the planet what was unmade into those automobiles that are sitting there and not being used, that end up as junk, put into a big hole to pollute the planet. So it's no different than extracting from the planet, processing it ways that creates a toxic waste stream, and all that junk ends up back in your biosphere. So when the biosphere comes back to bite you, because now you're taking in on the input side what it is we put back in her on the output side, you begin to realize the drain. Okay? What we end up doing to our own life support system. That's called demonic programming. Those are your Democrats that did that. Turn people into parasites, believing that some other source of energy is going to be able to give you something for free, and therefore all you got to do is ask for it without working for it, and you get it. So one of the easiest ways in which that's programmed into people is for people to believe in their own minds they have less of what they have in energy translated through money, instead of living in nature and living harmony with nature, when nature is a provider of everything that we need. So the entire civilization that was built on this planet as a result of a money system is why I learned as a child that money was the root of all evil. And it is. Because where do you think that energy comes from? It comes from her. And the end result of that is to toxify the very biosphere that we live in as a result of that process. And that's why that has to end. So if you want to use your creative imagination to imagine a completely different reality that isn't doing that, that allows us all to spin our Merkaba, to graduate, I would suggest a new way of thinking. You think?